This episode is brought to you by MeUndies. Underwear drawers are like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to pull out or what shape it's in. So upgrade your collection with the buttery soft comfort of MeUndies. MeUndies' signature fabric is as soft as a warm hug from your favorite sweater. Plus, it's breathable and oh so comfy, making it ideal for all-day wear. Get 20% off your first order, plus free shipping at MeUndies.com/Spotify with code SPOTIFY. That's MeUndies.com/Spotify, code SPOTIFY.
I think you're on mute.
Workday starting to sound the same?
I think you're on mute.
Find something that sounds better for your career on LinkedIn. With LinkedIn Job Collections, you can browse curated collections by relevant industries and benefits, like flex PTO or hybrid workplaces, so you can find the right job for you. Get started at linkedin.com/jobs. Finding where you fit. LinkedIn knows how.
Hey everybody, Anthony here with an amazing campaign that is going up in about a week. It is called the Catan Masterpiece Series. This is coming from FanRoll, and it is exactly what it sounds like. A masterpiece collection of upgrades for your copy of Catan. Going live on Kickstarter on February 18th, the Catan Masterpiece Series features all sorts of amazing stuff from upgraded roads, settlements, cities, tiles, tokens, robbers, the whole 9 yards. So sign up BoardGamersAnonymous.com/Catan. If you sign up on the backer kit page for early information, it helps us out a little bit. Plus, you'll get information when the campaign goes live. So definitely check that out if you're a huge fan of Catan. If you just want a fancy version to go with all the other fancy versions of games you have on your shelf, this is your opportunity to do just that, with a lot of upgrades that can be customized to your liking. Once again, that is BoardGamersAnonymous.com/Catan.
Welcome to Board Game Anonymous, the podcast where everyone is welcome at the table, but of course, no one knows whose turn it is. This is Chris.
And this is Anthony.
And this is episode 514, BGG Hall of Fame Hits and Misses. We like to thank all our Patreon backers for helping us unlock a brand new episode. Hello, friends. We're back again. Hopefully, you're having a fantastic week. We're so glad that you joined us here at the table. Anthony, we're taking on the biggest games, according to BGG, of all time. They're BGG Hall of Fame games.
Yeah, this was a funny thing we saw go up. It's the 25th anniversary of Board Game Geek. They wanted to do something big, so they launched their own Hall of Fame.
I'll just say we did it first.
We did do it first, which is funny because we are much younger than them.
And we look great. I'm just saying.
It's amazing.
I know.
But the funny thing about this list is they had a ton of games. They started off with 25 games.
They didn't fool around.
Yeah, which as an inaugural class, that is a lot. The only rule I saw was that it had to be at least 10 years old.
Okay. That's fine.
No recent stuff. But obviously there's a lot of chatter. People have opinions. Why is this game here? Why is this game not? So we asked all of you to tell us, why is this game here? Why is this game not? And we want to go through and we want to chat about it. People had some interesting opinions, some hot takes, some recommendations that I agree with, some that I disagree with. And I think it'll be fun to kind of just discuss, A, the makeup of this list, but B, where we think other things could have been put that makes sense. So some interesting discussion points here, both on what works and what doesn't.
Sure. Well, that's the voice of the gamers, and that will be our feature review. So stick around where your voices hit the table. All right, Anthony, but before we get into all that fun stuff, let's talk about what's happening and the state of play with BGA.
Yeah, so let's kick it off real quick here with a fun thing that Kelber, our community manager over on Discord, has been putting together the last couple of months. You can join the Discord. You do not have to be a Patreon backer to join the Discord and participate in the conversation. You'll get in there. You'll see a couple of things locked here and there. Those are for the Patreon backers. But for the most part, everything is open. And part of that is we have tournaments that show up on Board Game Arena every month or so. So right now, there are 2 tournaments scheduled to start on February 17th. So as you're listening to this, you have plenty of time, about 4 or 5 days or so to sign up. So there's a Lost Ruins Varnak tournament and then a Harmonies tournament. So you can join us and see who's the best at these 2 games that I like a lot, and one game Chris likes a lot.
And one he does not.
Yeah.
Guess which one it is, people.
Yeah, I know. The one he hasn't reviewed yet. So I'm signed up for both. Chris, I think you said you were going to set up for one of them.
I am, definitely.
Okay.
I've played the other one a lot, to be fair. And I'm still not revealing what it is, but I have played the other one a lot too. So
I think they know.
They don't know.
Oh, no, it's a secret? Okay. I did this last month, played Terraforming Mars with one of you all listeners out there, and it was a lot of fun. My highest score ever that I've gotten in Terraforming Mars in this 2-player game online, and I still lost. So
well done, people. Well done.
Yes, stomp it on me. So yeah, definitely hop on there. It's in the announcement thread if you join the Discord. Link to the Discord is in the show notes. It's also on Facebook, or you can email me and say, give me that link, and I will send it to you. But yeah, hop in there, join us. Lots of good conversations, including our question of the week conversations, which you'll find in that thread.
Sweet.
All right. So that's one thing. The other thing is we have a survey that's going up here in the next couple of days. So by the time you hear this, it should be up. And it will be linked from all the usual places. So wherever you find your stuff, including the show notes for this show, you'll be able to find the survey and respond to it. The survey is designed to give us a better sense of who you are, what you play, what you like about the show, what you like about the hobby. As we evolve and develop this show, the more feedback we have, the more we can kind of cater it to what you all like. At the same time, if you complete the survey, you are entered into a contest to win games and stuff.
Whoa.
So we have several prizes that we'll be announcing next week, but we'll just say you get games. It's the way it goes. So
I love those.
Yeah.
Those are the best surveys.
I got a big long list of prizes from the house. There's also some gift certificates and stuff that you can choose a game of your choice from different retailers. So if you want games and stuff, fill out the survey. Let us know what you think. And we really appreciate your feedback in advance.
Excellent.
All right. And then lastly, but not leastly, we have yet another review here. So thank you to everybody who is leaving reviews on your podcast player of choice. It's very helpful for us to see what you all think, but also just for the rest of the world to find this show. So over on Apple Podcasts, the review here from Mo Fear. Chris and Anthony speak clearly, have fun, and are a pleasure to listen to. Great board game podcast. So,
Aw.
Thank you, Mo Fear. We really appreciate that.
That's excellent. Thank you so much. It's always great getting everyone's reviews out there. We review a lot of stuff. We really want you to review a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
So, and even us, review us as much as possible. Again, all your different podcast players, YouTube channel, everything that's out there. Thank you so much for your likes, subscribes, follows, and especially sharing the podcast with other people out there. The more people that learn about the podcast, the more people that play tabletop gaming. And really, that's our goal, to have as many people as possible at the table with you. All right, Anthony. So that's everything that's going on with us out there. Let's talk about what's happening with Patreon. What's our extra special episode this coming week?
We mentioned this last week, but we are jumping into the BG after show.
Whoa,
So,
after
yeah.
hours.
You keep saying after hours. It's just after show, man. Like, people are going to get ideas.
But the after hours show is after hours.
It's true. So yeah, whatever you want to think that is. But no, we're gonna hop on there. We're gonna talk about what we've been watching, what we've been reading, all the stuff that is not games. Basically, it's the conversation we tend to have with each other before and after we record.
But after hours.
But now it's after hours. and it's just for you guys. So we've had a lot of great feedback on our lists for the top movie lists, our top video game lists, and we do consume a lot of other types of media. So why not talk about it? So we're going to be doing that. We also have a couple fun things planned for that after hours block in the
See, now I got you saying it.
I know you broke it, man. You broke it. After show. But yeah, stay tuned. We have some fun stuff coming up. This is available again for anybody on the Patreon producer level or higher. That's a $5 tier. You get this and exclusive access to all of our stuff in Discord and all that fun stuff. So
yeah,
hop in there, check it out. There's 65 other episodes as well, other bonus content, including those video game, movie lists, TV lists that we talked about. Lots of fun stuff.
Yeah, we do a lot of stuff, and you'd be surprised all the stuff we've done previously before tabletop gaming, and we're trying to catch up on that because we love to review, we love to inform and educate, and we love to do all those things. Say along with me, Anthony. After hours.
After hours, yeah. I think that's just the name now because I'm just going to keep saying it, and I don't know what to do about that.
Yeah, we'll be talking about a lot of fun game stuff that may not be normal podcast stuff. But again, if you like to listen to the podcast without commercials, definitely hit up Patreon because the ad-free episodes are there each and every week.
Yep.
All right, Anthony, so that's everything that's going on with BGA. Let's get on to the games that hit the table. Let's start off with our roll for preview. All right, so my roll for preview here this week is a game that is currently on GameFound, and I found it on GameFound. What a surprise. It was I finally now get what GameFound is named after.
You find games, yeah.
You find games. They're so ingenious, these
people. You
people.
did it, man.
I did it. I still don't like their interface, but it's fine. Still don't like the interface. But yeah, so many games have moved over to GameFound that like the initial reflex action is to go to Kickstarter. And I go to Kickstarter like this past week, and I'm like, oh, there's a bunch of miniature terrain as like the most popular selections. And I'm just like, where's the games, man? And then found them on GameFound, which, yeah, again, irony. So one of the big games that I own, and I know, Anthony, you also purchased this as well, was Massive Darkness.
Right.
And this was from CMON, and this is a dungeon crawl that has a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff came with its campaign. A lot of expansions came with its campaign. CMON does a great job with its miniatures, a great job with the campaign, and it was a massive undertaking. It was rather expensive, so to speak. Not as much these days as it was. And it did not do initially so well. I think you parted with your copy.
I played it once and deeply disliked it and sold it the next day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just again, it's been like 7-8 years since I played this game. But it was too easy to the point of being boring.
Whoa.
Unless you played with one particular type of the rules. Like,
sure.
The rules were just not very tight. They weren't very well, tuned. And considering it's based on like some of the elements of like the zombie side system and kind of refined for this fantasy, like role-playing type of approach, I thought like that's a very well-refined system. I don't understand what went wrong. So I sold my stuff when it was still worth what I paid for it. I've heard they made it better though. Yeah,
so I still have my copy. I have never opened it because I've played other people's copies, especially at conventions, because it's definitely a convention game. It's big. It's got a lot of pieces to it. You want to have as large party as possible to be able to play it. But I experienced not as negative a reaction as you did, but I was like, okay, this is just generic.
Yeah.
And then they came out with Massive Darkness 2, and they took a very different turn where it wasn't just your typical dungeon crawl. Now, what was different about it was the actual hero characters, they had different play styles. So not just different play powers, but actually different ways in which they could activate or utilize their powers. So depending on the class that you picked, that particular character, you had to play a different mini game in order to utilize your special abilities or your attacks and such and such. That's utterly brilliant. That's great. I love that. That kind of brought me back on board. And I was like, I should back number 2. But again, still had not opened number 1. And again, since it had so many different types of mechanics, I was unsure how it was going to play once it got to the table, because again, some of the mechanics were like you move a little disc here and there, some of them were more complex. How does it actually play? Still have not gotten a chance to play Massive Darkness 2. If you have a copy and you're local, I would love to be able to play it. So I was interested, and it made me hold on to my first edition copy. Now, Massive Darkness Dungeons of Shadowreach. This is the, I guess, second standalone edition. It's a co-op dungeon crawler. As we said, it's got all of the classic monsters and creatures and the dungeon crawling that goes on. And it once again brings back the new play style. That is, when you have a particular character, the character based upon its class does a particular thing. So in this version, there's an assassin, and the assassin has 2 abilities, and they're rolling dice to be able to use their shadow abilities. The Chronomancer has the power of time itself. So, of course, there's a sand timer, and there's a little mini game that you have to play out in order to be able to access these different time spells. There's an herbalist, very cool kind of class, and the herbalist is all about collecting all of these different herbs that it needs in order to create these different potions, and then be able to use those potions in game. The hunter allows you to pick a companion, one of the monsters that you might face, to keep it as a pet to kind of serve you and your team. Very cool kind of action. The cleric. The cleric is able to use the blessings of the gods. So they get to pick which of the blessings they're able to kind of add to their actual tableau play and to be able to utilize them. The warrior is all about utilizing different weapons and skills. So it has its own little tableau that you're kind of building out and a little track that you're kind of moving through. Beyond that, it's the classic CMON where all the miniatures look amazing and there's an endless number of expansions, and it's a huge campaign. So it is currently on GameFound. There's 14 days left as of this recording. They've already surpassed their funding. This is always really funny. They surpassed their funding in 46 minutes and 11 seconds. Yeah. I love how GameFound is like, that's a thing you should know. It's not a thing I need to know, man. No. It's fine. If you want to pick this up, again, there's a lot of things you could pick up that goes along with this. There's also an RPG that can go along with this now, which I guess that's a thing. And it's just, there's a lot. Basically, if you want all of the stuff for this particular campaign game, standalone campaign game, you're looking at about $150 US. So not cheap. If you're looking for just the base box, you're looking at $110. And then there's a lot of extras here and there. And then obviously if you back, on Kickstarter, not Kickstarter, GameFound. If you're back on GameFound, you'll get extra little things because that's how CMON does things. So right now, maybe it's not the best deal, but eventually they'll add more stretch goals and more miniatures, and you'll be like, yay, miniatures, and then you'll back this thing. So,
and then more add-ons, and all of a sudden you're spending $400. You're like, wait a second, how did I do that?
Yeah. So, Massive Darkness, Dungeons of Shadowreach. It's a thing.
It is a thing. I can't argue with that.
It is definitely a thing. I would also say, as always, take a long, deep look at the shipping, because the shipping can also be expensive. Again, depending on what you pay for and where you're located. In the US, it's $29, and then it's up. And I mean, it's up. So, yeah. There you go. Massive Darkness, Dungeons of Shadowreach. It's on GameFound.
Yeah. There is a time in my life where this would have been exciting, and I might even consider backing it. I'm well past that time.
Oh no! What happened, man?
Space and money. That's what happened. Yeah, I don't know. It looks cool. Like I had known about some of the updates they made to Massive Darkness 2. I've always wanted to try it.
Yes.
When you spend $300 or $400 on a game though, and you don't like it, it was a pretty solid burn. And in the end, I didn't lose any money. I just mostly lost time, packing things up. But I don't know. I don't know anybody who owns any of these anymore. So we'll have to track people down at conventions or something.
I really like the idea that the classes have their own special little mini game. It really diversifies the kind of gameplay.
No, that's great. That's a great idea.
It's real smart. It's real dynamic. It's fun. Again, I think we've talked about this endless numbers of times. So one more time, people. If you're going to include literally everything that you could possibly produce for a specific game, it's going to be so cost prohibitive that people who would want to back your campaign at, let's say, $75 are not going to do it, because now it's $500 after all the expansions and everything else. So maybe split up the campaign a little bit. Maybe do the base set and then do the other stuff a little bit later so we can play it and try it out. Just
right.
saying.
And they're like, oh, no, the starter box by itself, just 110. I'm like, yeah, but you're baking in the price of like the 50 stretch goals that you're going to give me too. I don't want all that. So no, thank you.
Yeah, you could do, and we were just talking about this at the convention. We went to Level Up Retreat, where we had seen several people play Andromeda's Edge with the actual cardboard version. And we were like, there's a cardboard version?
I know.
It's that small? Because anytime you bring Andromeda's Edge, it's a lift.
Right.
And we were like, they're never going to fit that on the table. And like, they did, because it's cardboard.
Yeah.
I'm not saying the cardboard version's better. It's definitely not, but it's accessible. And that's a thing. The thing people need now.
I'm glad it exists. The game is still good. It's just not as fancy. And like, I could carry it with me to places. I cannot do that with the version.
Hi there, I'm Hugh from Poderation. If you like today's show, why not check out Dungeons and Dragonfruits, the bizarre, strange, and queer in every sense of the word D&D podcast. Join 5 friends as they laugh, learn, and adventure their way through the weird, wonderful world of Widdershins, where dragons hatch from trees and have adventures of all forms in every shape and size. Available wherever you can get your podcasts.
I have now.
It's a problem. It's a thing.
Yeah.
So there you go.
The thing. The worst
All
thing.
right. Anthony, how about your roll for review? What do you got for us this week?
Alrighty. So the game I'm going to talk about is a game that you also played. So
I'm involved in this?
It's a joint roll for review.
Yeah!
Tag
Roll
team.
2 die!
Roll 2 dice. So this is Endeavor Deep Sea. Now, I've played it a few times. Chris, you probably just played it the one time still, right?
Yes, I played it the one time, but I have played earlier versions of it.
Right.
Some which contain slavery and some which didn't contain slavery. So this was non-slavery light version.
No slavery in this game. It's amazing. Yeah. Like,
so you can do a game without slavery.
Apparently it's possible.
How could you do and still be a good game?
I think people are going to find out at the end of this review, but hint, yeah, I think it is good.
Plot twist.
Crazy. So Endeavor Deep Sea is the third version of this formula, right?
Uh-huh.
The original Endeavor came out back in 2009. Endeavor Age of Sail was like a re-implementation of that by Burn Island Games Grand Gamers Guild in 2018. And now, 6 years later, we have version 3, Endeavor Deep Sea. Now, those ones are about kind of traveling the world and colonialism, and again, yes, slavery is a big part of that. But they all kind of have a similar idea in that you are moving up these different tracks that impact income and action economy, right? Mm-hmm. This game still has that, and it still has a map that you kind of build out over the course of the game. And then everything else feels slightly different.
Okay.
So I don't remember Age of Sail very well. I think I played it right around the time it came out a couple times.
Sure.
I don't know when the last time you played it was, but for me, it's been a while.
It's been a while. Yeah, I it's kind of hard to remember because the slavery thing was such like, oh, this is slavery in it. I feel not so great about this, that this is in the game. So I think after my initial, I don't know, I might have played it twice. Because I think the first time I played it, I was like, what? And the second time I played it, I was like, we don't have to do that, right? And can you play around it? Because we have to review these games. And the answer is, you really can't. If somebody does any kind of slavery in that game, then you are hindered tremendously. And we've done a full review on this.
Yeah.
So when we had heard about this, we were very excited because, again, mechanically, like a lot of the other games that utilize or thematically are about colonialism and slavery on some extent, this seemed to be an excellent situation to kind of keep the mechanics. And again, it didn't need to be that way. And it turns out, on some level, at least in my minor experience, it didn't need to be that way. It still plays. It's still a game.
Yeah, and it's, like there are a few games right of late that have been like retheming older games that were questionable. Like you've got Sky Mines to Mombasa, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is that, but it's also kind of a reimagining of those rules and a tightening of those rules.
Sure.
This game is a little bit shorter. It's a little bit more condensed. There's variability in the map setup. There's a cooperative mode that they put into it. There's a lot more added here and worked on. So it does feel like a new game on top of being an alternative to that other one.
Sure.
So we're just going to focus on this because, old games are old. So the idea of the game is you are like a research institute, right? And you're trying to go out and study the ocean, but also do it sustainably and conserve marine life, right? And that's literal mechanics. There's a conservation mechanic in the game. The way you do that is you're going to recruit different people every round from a market, and those are going to become action spots for you to take, right? So when you take an action, it's going to tell you which specific actions you can take on the map. The map is kind of this growing thing of these different tiles. The tiles represent different depths. So you start out, everything's at surface level, and there's like 1 or 2 beneath the surface, and it goes all the way down to level 5 beneath the surface, like way down there. And the lower you go, the better the stuff is. And so the game rewards you for pretty much any action you can take. You're rewarded if you explore the map and uncover new tiles. You're rewarded when you move one of your submarines to that map tile. You're rewarded when you do the discovery action and you pull one of the tokens off of that map tile. You're rewarded when you journal and you kind of write down your findings. And that also is a very useful way to upgrade all those workers that you have. So there's stuff for pretty much everything. There's also a separate map board that early in the game doesn't seem to do anything. It just kind of sits there. I think in our game that you and I played, it was like round 3 or 4 before people really started to go there and do anything. By the end of the game, that's all you're doing, is just throwing stuff on the map board because it's points.
Sure.
Right. And then there's conservation actions as well out on the map. So these are often like, you get placement on the map board. You also get maybe upgrades or whatever else you might get. So the balance of the game is, how do I move up my tracks? Because the tracks you have on your personal player board are going to determine what level of new worker you get, right? These tiles that you draft at the beginning of the round, like they go from 1 to 5. You need to move up that track to get better ones later in the game. How many like action discs you get as income each round, and how many action discs you can take off of your workers. They don't come off automatically. You have to remove them. Plus how far you can move and how deep you can go. So you got to balance all 4 of those things if you want to be able to do anything efficiently. And then you need to do those things. And everybody's going to have the same number of actions as a base level, but you can kind of chain them together and get more, depending on how many discs you have and how many upgrades you get and what kind of flow you get. So I found it to be, it's funny because like reading the rules, I was like, this feels very just like mechanical. Move up track 1, place disc on thing, gain more track, get some points. But it did feel somewhat thematic, at least. Like the tiles are all different. They all do a thing. There's like a story with each of the map things.
Yeah.
It wasn't too abstract, right?
That's really hard to say. Like I think a lot of effort was put into making it not feel abstract.
Right.
But having played the other previous endeavors, you're typically just dropping a disc.
Right.
And it's just like you're dropping a disc to kind of claim a location. So in this game, you're dropping a disc. Again, the mechanic is the same, but they do make a significant effort to diversify what you're doing by dropping that disc. So whether you're scanning or you're researching or any number of other things that you're doing in that game, it does feel like at least it's got at least enough sense to it that I think initially when I was looking at it, I'm like, oh, so what is this? This is, I have to research. I'm like, oh no, what does researching entail? And and conservation, what does conservation entail? And then like the more I thought about it, I was like, Oh no, this is not that overly complicated. It's just a
No.
matter of like I'm dropping discs, and it's just a matter of like, again, going back to the earlier endeavor, certain discs can go in certain spots based upon the people that you employ. So it really the effort was made. There's no badness to that. Like a significant effort was made to make this thematic. And I think the artwork on the tile does most of the heavy lifting, because the artwork does look very dramatic and dynamic and very interesting and fun. A lot of just giant sea creatures and the ocean depth. Like those tiles and the artwork certainly made the game just wonderful.
Yeah, and there are a lot of them, right? Like it's not a set map, and because they're modular, they can have. I think the box comes with 10 different scenarios, which each have a different starting setup and each have a different like width,
Sure.
how wide they can go. And there are 37 different ocean tiles, so you can do a lot with that, and they are very different, and it's fun, especially the first like 3 or 4 times you play, as you
Sure.
explore and uncover these different tiles. You're like, oh, that's cool. It's like a Kraken.
Yeah.
Like, oh, cool. That's the ship the Kraken broke. They're both at the bottom of the ocean.
Yes.
And that's very cool. I appreciated that. The specialist tiles, the actions you're taking, they kind of fit to the specialist, but at the end of the day, there's only the 5 actions in the game, so it's not like they can't be that thematic.
Sure.
I liked it quite a bit. I think the main issue I have with the game, to kind of jump ahead a little,
Okay.
is the last round. And we were talking about this after we played it, but the last round, and this is like a whole modern Euro thing. The last round is you have your engine fully up. Now just kick it repeatedly and see how many points you can get.
Sure.
And I know a lot of people like that. I don't like it that much. It feels like I'm not doing anything interesting, right?
You're not doing anything. It's not even interesting. It's like, if everyone ends with their engine, if everyone ends with all of those tracks fully completed,
right,
more or less, like to the nth degree,
which we did. 4 of us had only one of the 16 tracks out of the 4 of us was not only fully maxed out.
So it doesn't feel like you did anything significant whatsoever, because everyone was able to do it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like there was really any significant long-term strategy, again, if everyone was able to do it. So I know when we first got into tabletop gaming, especially Euro gaming, Anthony, and we played a lot of games like Agricola, for example, you always felt like my engine is just about to pop off really big.
Right.
And again, it's one of those situations where, because it felt that way, it made me want to play the game again.
Right.
Even though I know that inevitably my engine is never going to like just, really blow smoke. It's just not going to do that. It's just, it's going to just get there.
Yeah. And I think it's a matter of taste, because I play with people who love that. They love that the last round of the game is them being able to go God mode and be like, this is what I can do. And like when we played, that's what I did. I scored like 40 points in that last round because I threw so many stars on the map. But it's just less interesting to me. I'm not making decisions anymore.
Sure.
In that last round, in a game like this, every round up to there, everything felt tight, and it was hard to do what I wanted to do and get across the map and to be able to get the specialist I want and move up the track accordingly. And eventually I'm like, oh, I've maxed out all the tracks. I have plenty of discs. I have all my workers. I'm going to go park myself on this tile and I'm going to mine it for points.
Yes.
And then the game will end. And it's fine. It's just it was a little bit of a letdown, right? You want it to crescendo, and it crescendoed and then kind of fell towards the end.
And I think that hurts the game, because like you said, all of these games are very abstracted. There's no hurting any of those games by, saying it's abstract and such. But I think it is fair to say that at a certain point, you get to see behind the curtain. And I think you get to see behind the curtain when a game is just like, it just doesn't work for whatever reason. There's just something, it's non-functional.
It's just it's like a half a round too long.
Yeah.
I don't know how you fix that. Like, because I feel like if you cut off the whole last round, that's too much. Like, you don't get a chance to get that final tile with the end game scoring bonus. You don't get a chance to like do those like level 5 tiles at the bottom of the map.
Yeah.
You want to do all that, but you spent a decent amount of time mining at it. So, and I don't, and again, I've played it like 3 or 4 times. I can't, maybe it was not common. Maybe with 4 players, things accelerate a little bit more. I don't know. But in my experience, the times I've played the game, this has happened most of the time. So I'm just like, okay, it's end of the game time. Whoever's winning, whoever has the best engine, whoever's in the right position is just going to rack up the points, and everybody else is. It all scales to where you're at on the board.
Yeah, I felt that the game was. I felt that the game was rather, like, at least initially, when we got a very good teach, and then we sat down to play, and there's a lot of things happening, but primarily the thing that was happening that was kind of both interesting and also at the same time kind of dismissive was all of these tiles had a lot of interesting things to do, and they could give you points, and they could allow you to kind of snowball with other things. And yet at the same time, there's this one kind of mission board that sets the parameters for victory points in that game, and it has 3 different things that you need to do. And again, inevitably in the end, all the 3 things are the same. You just have to put discs down at certain places.
Mm-hmm.
So I really wish, and again, I don't know if you could do that, but I almost wish that that scoring board wasn't there, because I felt like it just overly focused me on doing those 3 things in those specific areas instead of exploring and building different aspects of the game. Like the other little weird abstract board where you're placing star tokens down in order to score points and getting some extra ability, that's relatively okay. I would have loved the artwork to be a little more dynamic there, but the actual 3 scoring goals, I felt like that's the game, because I think one of the people at the table mentioned that they would have scored 20 points if they were, one thing here and there kind of situation. So
right.
I would have loved if that was not included and just you were playing the game itself. You had a particular additional scoring board as far as where you place the stars, but the board itself was the thing. I think that would have been an excellent game. I understand why it's not, because they have multiple missions that have some sort of level of a narrative to it, and it builds as the game goes on. So I appreciate that, but I would love for the game itself, the board itself, even though it's modular, I would have loved that to be the game, that to be the situation, because I think otherwise I'm not exploring certain areas, I'm not doing certain things because the goals are not, it's not helpful for me in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, and I think part of that is, and I don't who knows how it's designed or developed. I'm not going to say one way or the other, but there's a cooperative mode of the game.
Sure.
That definitely leans a little bit more on the different missions.
Yeah.
Because the goal of the cooperative mode is to meet like different thresholds for the goals that are set for you.
Sure.
Right. Because there ends up being, there's a whole separate bonus goal deck and a whole separate like setback deck. Those come into play. And then you have not just those 3 goals, but 3 more, and then 1 on top of that. So you have 7 different goals at a certain point in the game when you're trying to achieve to a certain degree, when you're playing cooperative, which is very cool. Like from a solo gamer perspective, I like it. I think I like it more.
Sure.
Because then at least I have these different bars I'm trying to reach, and it doesn't matter if my engine's popping off, because if I don't meet those bars, I'm not going to win the game. It's like Terraforming Mars. Like when I play solo Terraforming Mars, I don't really care what my score is, because it's irrelevant if I don't complete all of the objectives. Yeah. This feels like that. Whereas in a multiplayer, you're like, I'm just going to run my score and run my score and run my score until the game is over.
Yeah.
And it's, to me personally, it's a little less interesting. And I could see why, like in the case of the bonus objectives on the map, that could be the case for you as well.
Yeah, and the bonus objectives are the vast amount of scoring in that game.
Right.
I mean, other than the fact that we all dumped a crazy amount of stars on that other board.
Just a big old pile at the end of the game.
Which seemed broken, honestly.
I used all of mine.
I don't remember how many I used, but like,
yeah,
it seemed kind of broken.
I had the same thought. I'm like, did we break the game? I don't know if we broke the game.
Because it seemed like it was way too many stars in that section.
Yeah.
And again, like it ran a little. So maybe the game spiritually is meant to be a co-op game, and they found a way to make it a competitive game. Yeah,
I mean, it's not how the rules are written. It's like the back page of the rule book is the co-op rules, but I do like it. I think it's a good way to do this. It's my favorite way of doing solo co-op rules within a competitive game. It's to set objectives and thresholds to hit.
It'd make a lot more sense, again, with those kind of bonus goals. Because, again, without the bonus goals are just arbitrary in a competitive game.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
They're
And,
like-
you know, thematically, it is a cooperative activity. You're exploring the ocean together.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense thematically as
Now,
well.
if you gave us torpedoes...
Ooh. We're conserving nature, but not you.
Oh, that's... I didn't say anything about people. I love those animals, but...
Yay, a turtle. Oh, another sub. Blow it up.
It's environmentally sound. We're fine with this.
Yeah, it's all good. So yeah, like after the game, somebody asked like, well, what do you think? And I was like, it's like right now sitting at a high play on the line to a buy. I think I'm still there. Having played it another couple times. It's good. I like it. I'm going to keep it. I own it. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to play it more. Maybe some different player counts as well. And I'll probably go through the rest of the campaign. I say campaign, the different missions.
Sure.
In the solo mode because I'm having fun with that. But yeah, I don't know. Just the full competitive game towards the end is just, you know, and people they're gonna write in and be like, you guys did something wrong. I'm like, maybe, I don't know. But as we played it, it was it's just a little bit of a letdown at the end, not quite enough to be a buy.
Yeah, no, I think we did fine. We had like 3 people who knew the game, so
yeah. It's not a complicated game either. It's like a 12-page rulebook. It's not crazy.
I think, again, it's a matter of that. I think they invested well into the co-op version, the thematic version of the game, and the competitive version. Again, it's not bad. I'm going to give the game a play. I have to play it more to see if it kind of raises a little bit on that. I probably won't have the opportunity to do so because I don't have a copy of it, but I would definitely like to play it again. The production's very good.
Yeah.
And I like the different workers that you could choose from. I would really prefer, I think that final bottom top level worker that you can get is when things get a little diverse, where they have different special abilities and scoring abilities in the game.
Yeah.
I would have liked to seen more of that earlier with the different workers. Cause like the idea is like, okay, so everyone needs to scan in this section in order to score bonus points. So everyone takes the same scan people. And like, I guess that's fine, but it's not as much fun. I would have liked to seen, less of the same people, because otherwise everyone builds the same tableau.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, why are we doing this? Like, why is the selection thing a thing if everyone can get the same people? Right. So I would have liked more diversity. Like all the workers are slightly different. Excellent. Or they all have different, or even earlier in the game, if they had end game bonus points that were a little bit different. It's, only the last, and I think I had one and you had one. I think that maybe other people had maybe one at the end.
Yeah. Because it's typically for each of the levels, there are 3 different workers or specialists, and then just multiple copies of each. At the end, they're all unique. There's 12 of them, and they're all different.
Yeah, I like the unique ones.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think that'd be cool to see those earlier, because at the end, like the 3 I had to choose from, I'm like, none of these are great for the engine I built.
Sure.
This is the most points. I'll get this one, but none of them were like, oh my gosh, that one. So it'd be cool to get that like in the middle of the game and then start building for it or something.
Yeah. Great game, great production, a lot of ways to play it. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I dig it. I'll keep playing it.
Endeavor, Deep Sea. I want to say Deep Sea Adventure, but that's a different game.
I know.
That's a co-op game when you run out of oxygen, everyone dies in the submarine.
Oh no, the turtles win.
I could see that happening for sure. All right, everybody. Well, that leaves on to our feature review. So our feature review this week is The Voice of the Gamers. And this week our gamers are speaking up about the BGG Hall of Fame, the hits and misses. And Anthony, as you mentioned, they can hit us up on this and so many topics on all the different social medias, including Discord and Patreon.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We're pulling answers here from Patreon, Facebook, Blue Sky, and Discord. So any of those places, all of them are open to you. You can hop in there, answer the question of the week, and good chance if you do, it'll be right on the show.
What's next week's question, speaking of which?
Yeah, no, great question. Next week, we're going to talk about... we're not even going to talk about it. We're going to have a fun game. Badly describe a board game. So you're going to send us poorly written descriptions of games, and we're going to try to guess what game you're talking about.
Excellent.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
I would love someone to write us a poorly written description about our podcast, but still give us 5 stars.
Yeah, right.
That'd be fantastic.
Poorly written, not poorly worded.
No. Just poorly written. Just be like, voice on these things about these cardboard things? I don't know. It's a thing.
Yeah. You should use "it's a thing" like 3 times.
Oh, at least 3 times.
At least 3 times.
I have at least 4 or 5 "it's a thing" things. So if you can include the "it's a thing" into the reviews, that would be a thing. I'm just saying.
If you're listening to this first time, you're like, what?
What? We talked about doing an episode 0. We have to do it again at some point.
Right. Yeah. It's just you saying "it's a thing" over and over again.
It works, man.
Yeah. It's a job done.
It is what it is.
It is. All right.
So let's get back to the voice of the gamers, Anthony.
The voice of the gamers.
Let them speak for once.
Okay. Silence. So our voice of the gamer this week is a reaction to the voice of the largest platform in board gaming. So
is that us?
No, I wish.
We're number 2.
I mean, secretly, low key,
but
officially, no.
we don't like to brag.
Yeah.
We like to remain anonymous.
Yeah,
hardcore.
Yeah, those stats are in the background. It's all good.
That's right.
But Board Game Geek's Hall of Fame. This went up last month, and there are 25 games on the list. Just running through them real quick in order of release, I believe.
And
not even order of release. This is a weird order.
All right.
Diplomacy, Acquire, Civilization, Cosmic Encounter, Magic the Gathering, Catan, El Grande, 1830, Raw, Tigris and Euphrates, Carcassonne, Power Grid, Ticket to Ride, Kalis, Twilight Struggle, Through the Ages, A New Story of Civilization, Agricola, Brass Lancashire, Race for the Galaxy, Dominion, Pandemic, Seven Wonders, The Castles of Burgundy, Terra Mystica, and Concordia.
Very nice.
So that's 25 very good games. And again, these are not meant to be the best games of all time. A Hall of Fame is meant to be the most important or most influential games of all time. So there's been a lot of conversation about this. Like, I think that the number one thing people kind of point to is like, it's a very modern list.
Sure.
The games have to be at least 10 years old, but a lot of these games are from the last 20-25 years. Only a handful are from before that, which is interesting. And that was it. So we have a lot of conversation about that. So we figured we'd ask you guys, what's missing? The question I asked was, what is missing from this list? And to add that, what would you remove?
Ooh.
So not everybody answered it fully, but we got a lot of good discussion going on, especially in the Discord channel. Like, you can hop in there and see like the lengthy conversation here about this. But we're going to kind of pick at it a little bit, and we have our own opinions too, but we'll start with the voice of the gamers, of course. So Andrew on Patreon said Scythe.
Okay.
So he would add Scythe to the list. It really ushered in the crowdfunding era for board games, as well as set the new standard for board game production.
Sure.
Dual layer boards, metal coins, etc. While there were some successful board game projects prior, that campaign and game put Stonemaier Games on the map and set up the formula for others to emulate. Wow. It also was one of the first hybrid designs with Euro mechanics and Ameritrash combat.
Fair. Very fair. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't even be surprised to see it. I think it's like a year short of being eligible. If there's a 10-year rule, this game came out 9 years ago. So maybe next year. And then asked what game they would remove. They said Power Grid.
Whoa.
I don't think it is quite as impactful as others on the list, not as genre defining.
Shots fired.
Yeah. That's the hard thing, right? And I'm like, we're not going to sit here and be like, you're wrong. But for me, I'm like, Power Grid's so influential that everybody's going to have like their own kind of benchmark for what's influential.
Yeah, to be fair, again, like in the more modern age, or at least in the last decade, Scythe, because of all the things that he said in his kind of review here, it was a game changer for Kickstarter. It did put Jamie Stegmaier on top of the heap of all the Kickstarter creators out there. It was a hybrid. There's been hybrids before, certainly, but it was, and we talked about this. We had like a whole thing back in the day. Like, it was the highest funded non-IP board game at the time ever. Mm-hmm. So it was a significant seismic drop in the industry, and it's still being played today.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I can't argue with it. I don't love the game, but like its influence is definitely there.
Absolutely.
All right. So also on Patreon, Drew says Twilight Imperium. So, I like Drew's argument here. For the last 12 years I've been in the hobby, TI3 and subsequently TI4 have been the defining epic game.
Fantastic. Yeah.
As one delves into the hobby, it easily is mentioned among gaming experiences everyone should pursue at least once. The first gaming product of Fantasy Flight Games, which not only would carry Twilight Imperium, which is currently number 5, but go on to produce many top 100 games. TI4 belongs amongst the 25 Hall of Fame inductees. So Drew does not give us a game to remove, but
okay. It's fair.
I think we could talk about why Twilight Imperium should be on the list. I 100% agree. I'm a little surprised it's not.
I'm shocked that it's not, because even before I got like heavy into tabletop gaming, I had heard about Twilight Imperium, and it had that kind of Grail mythos to it more than any game that I had ever heard of, and I think even still to this day, because more times than not, it did take days to play it.
Yeah,
and people love to. It was planned around. I don't think I ever heard of any game like Twilight Imperium that people were like, it's going to take all of these hours. We can't wait to play. We have to make this a special, like all of those things. That was never a thing I heard anywhere else.
No, it's still like the one game that has that conversation around it. Like there's a million Kickstarter games that kind of have a similar thing. Like, oh, we got to set it up. It's going to take all day to play. It's very big, expensive, blah, 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 blah. But Twilight Imperium is like the one everybody has heard of. Yes. Everybody can agree is like a Grail experience.
It's true.
Not everybody likes it, and that's fine, but it's the one you hear about still.
It's true. So very true.
I most recently played it with a group of people who I had played once before, but it's just not even the type of game they necessarily always play. But I'm like, this is my thing. It's like a really heavy Euro, but like space and the explosions. It's great. It's, yeah, I don't know. I'm maybe next time, but this is definitely outside the 10-year window. The game's almost 25 years old.
Crazy.
It's more than 25 years old.
Yeah, it should. I'm really surprised that wasn't included in that list. I don't know what they were thinking.
Right. But, I mean, maybe they're trying to keep it on the lighter end. I mean, Through the Ages is on there. It's pretty heavy. But otherwise, these games are more midweight.
I mean, there's an 18XX on there.
Yeah, but we'll get to that one. But it can be argued that's one of the most influential games ever.
Sure.
So, all right. So moving on to the next handful of people here, we're getting into the Discord, and again, really wonderful, lengthy conversation in Discord. So Lamp in Discord says, and they mentioned a few games, Antiquity,
okay,
Splotter,
sure.
So they mention it as potentially the first use of polyominoes.
Whoa!
As we now see them in board games, so influential in games like Feast for Odin, Baron Park. Also mentioned Werewolf Mafia.
Okay.
That's a hidden deduction game.
Sure.
So the whole genre not really represented in the list. So Battlestar Galactica, Resistance, all those games. Werewolf kind of started all that. So, and and this is me kind of talking to this. We don't really see any of those proto games in here.
No.
So there's no chess, there's no shogi, there's no Go, there's no checkers, there's none of the old stuff that has been influential on everything.
Yes.
It really is like modern games. The oldest game on the list is from the 80s.
It's kind of weird, right?
Yeah, I guess it's not from the 80s. Acquire's older, but yeah, it is. It's definitely very modern.
Yeah, I think they're reflecting their current audience.
Yeah, which is fair. That's who they are. But
yeah, chess, I think if you look on Board Game Geek, I remember stumbling across this, but chess is pretty far down on the ratings, which is shocking.
Crazy. It's such a good game.
I'm not even going to argue that, because that's a whole conversation in and of itself. But just the fact that it's like, can you look that up? I don't know if you're looking that up currently.
It is a 7.2. It is ranked 445.
There you go. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's number 46 in abstract games. And it's the abstract game.
And it's probably, I think, arguably the biggest game in the globe. Forever, historically. Like every right?
Yeah. There's the world chess champion comes from like any of like a dozen different countries. It's a huge game. Its development happened across multiple centuries in different countries. Yeah,
it's been tied to political global situations. There's TV shows, movies, there's just everything about it. Like nothing comes close to it.
No. So that's our piece on chess, but it's not on the list, and it probably never will be.
Antiquity is my favorite Splatter game for sure.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
I think if for no other reason, it would be fantastic if that was just somewhat included somewhere, or at least an honorable mention, because I don't think it gets any kind of love that it deserves.
No, not at all. The funny thing too is people mentioned another Splatter game in their responses. Can you guess which one?
Food Chain Magnet.
No. No. What's influential? Can you think of it influential to design?
I mean, a lot of the Splatter games are really influential. I mean, Roads and Boats was probably
Early pick up and deliver, sure.
yeah.
So the one that came up several times in the conversation was Bus.
Oh, that's interesting. I always forget about Bus being a Splatter.
Yeah, so 99 came out in 99. And it was like a proto worker placement game. Right? It's not worker placement like we're used to. It's like worker programming almost. You put the workers out and then the action's going to happen in that order.
Sure.
Same as Dominant Species. But that mechanic didn't exist before that. And now we have hundreds and thousands of games that are worker placement-ish.
Crazy.
So yeah, Epigon on Discord says, I might have dropped Kalis for Bus, given its history as one of the original worker placement games and being the first main Splatter title. Butler Sock said, I feel like worker placement in Bus and Dominant Species is a different thing than, say, the worker placement in Agricola. So I'd agree that form deserves a place on the list. Feels like action programming more than worker placement. So we have Agricola. Maybe that's kind of why.
Sure.
So yeah, a lot of conversation around that one.
It's fair.
Yeah, so a couple others here. Epigon also mentions how Francis Tresham is the most influential game designer of all time. And you don't think about it, but Tresham made 1830 and Civilization.
Wow.
Both games that have spawned multiple genres on their own.
Yes.
As well as the video game Civilization. So that's huge. Definitely don't want to remove those. They also point out Through the Desert being one of their favorites.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Would have put that in there over Tigris and Euphrates.
Tigris and Euphrates, for me, that would be the one game that I would pull.
Yeah, same.
I know it has a history to it. I know it has fans to it. But I think there's so many other games are kind of like it and around it.
Yeah.
That I'm surprised it's a thing. I have played it. And I know, again, we had people in our game group, our friend Dave from way back in the day, like, he loves it. I was underwhelmed. But again, it just might be a situation of like, back in the day, this was amazing.
Right.
And now it's just, they've done this before. They've done this in other ways.
Yeah, it's not a game that has like the long tail that some of these others do. Like Raw has New Edition that just came out. People are still playing it. El Grande New Edition just came out. People are still playing it. But yeah, the two that stand out to me on the list were Kalis and Tigris and Euphrates.
Yeah.
They're just, I don't think I've ever seen anybody play either of those.
I've played Kalis a lot, and I like it. I haven't played the new version of it, which I almost picked it up a couple of times. I have the original version of it. It was just the idea of this. I guess the modern version of this would probably be a Great Western Trail, where you place buildings out along the road. And as people move down the road, there's pluses and minuses to it. So it was a Euro game that actually had ways to kind of directly attack other opponents. And that was kind of, I guess, revolutionary for Euro games back in the day. So there was a level of meanness to it. Like you could actually attack people or kind of, get other buildings out there to do that same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I would have not been surprised if it wasn't included, but I get it that it is. And also it's the iconic, really, really arrogant, snubby kind of king.
Right. I love that cover. Yeah, it's a funny thing. And if anybody's going to be on the list twice, other than Tresham, Nizia makes sense.
Okay,
like
sure.
Dude's made like 800 games, and they're very influential. So, all right. So, one more response here from Facebook. This is from Uriel, and Uriel says, "Personally, I think the one that surprises me the most is Raw.
Interesting.
It's an excellent game, and I like it a lot. But most of the other games either spawned a new era in board games or had a truckload of expansions, or both. And I don't think Raw cuts it.
In that way, it doesn't. I agree. In that way, it certainly doesn't. People do consider it like the quintessential bidding game.
Yeah.
And so maybe in that way it does.
Yeah, and that mechanic, the way it's designed, is used over and over again.
Sure.
Like, I know it's not like the most mind-blowing mechanic, but like that type of auction in games is very common.
Yes.
So other ones that they think are missing, kind of touches on what we were talking about, but they feel like non-hobby games like chess or Go or even Scrabble.
Sure.
Yes, I think Scrabble is a good board game.
Yeah, that's another game. If you take a look on BGG, and I remember going through the numbers there, that's surprisingly even more so. Like, I can understand chess taking the hit. This is a little more surprising.
I mean, I think a lot of people hate Scrabble because they just don't like word games. And if you don't like word games, you really hate Scrabble because that's all it is.
That's all it is. But how far down is it?
Oh, it's like 2,200.
That's crazy.
Yeah, like a 6.5.
I don't like Scrabble, but I don't hate it that much.
Right. I love Scrabble. It's one of my favorite games,
Yeah.
like non-hobby games, but it's I don't know. I don't know how I would rank it because I've never included it in my top 100. I don't know if I would, but
Yeah.
it's very good for me. So finishing up here from Uriel, within the hobby games limit, they said their vote would go to Age of Steam, which has inspired many games and still has content released today. I think it was skipped because they put in 1830.
Fair.
Which makes sense because that's the proto Steam.
Yes.
They also mentioned Puerto Rico, which I don't like that much, but held the number one spot the longest in the history of BGG.
Mm-hmm.
So that should account for something. And I like this last one a lot. I think it should have been mentioned. They could have mentioned Risk Legacy.
Whoa.
Which I've never played and don't ever intend to, but it's the father of all things legacy.
That's fantastic. Risk Legacy is amazing.
Yeah.
And it is very surprising, very dynamic, very fun. I guess if you think categorically, then it should be included, right? Like,
I think it should be. It's a good game.
It's a very good game, yeah.
But it also invented a whole style of games that we're still seeing stuff from.
It goes back to the question with Ra. Ra's not the first bidding game.
Right.
But it's probably, again, arguably, and we can argue it, but it's arguably the best bidding game.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe then you put, again, I have not played it, Pandemic Season 1.
Right.
Should that not then be the quintessential legacy game?
I mean, it's got another year or two until it's eligible.
Okay.
So that's part of it.
I guess
I know some people were talking about Wingspan in the chat too, and it's like, that game's too new.
Too new.
Maybe it'll be there eventually.
I don't think, to be fair, again, Wingspan's a great game, but I don't think it should be there.
Oh no, I agree, but I think it will be.
Yes.
If only for its impact on just like spreading hobby games outside of the hobby space.
That's fair.
Like, very few games have done that. It has done that.
It's fair.
Like, you've got Ticket to Ride and Catan on this list, Pandemic maybe, but the rest of these are still pretty niche hobby games.
Sure.
Magic the Gathering. Right. Anything you would add?
Well, like I said, the one I would take off was Tigris Euphrates.
Right.
Again, a lot of the list is quite good. I'm gonna stick with, because my experience of tabletop gaming for a very long time has always been what the mystique behind it, and because it's not the innovator of it, it's not the inventor of it, but it certainly I think has held the title. I think it's Twilight Imperium.
That was the first one I thought of when I asked this question.
Yeah.
Because I looked at the list, I'm like, where's Twilight Imperium? The second one I thought of did come up in a couple chats, but I think Dominant Species.
Dominant Species is a great choice.
I think that should be on this list as well.
Yeah, and that's something that just totally, because again, Cones of Dunshire.
Cones of Dunshire, exactly.
Like, the whole idea of, like, when you talked about Eurogaming, I guess it's because it's now more of a thing now where people kind of accepted cubes on a board.
Right.
But like, the insult to Eurogamers was your games are just cubes on a board.
Right.
Cubes and cones and stuff like that. Like, that was the joke. And it was kind of representative of tabletop gaming, especially for Euro games. And now, yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. So we'll see. Maybe next year they make the list. I haven't read up enough to know exactly what they're going to do here in the future, but it's cool. I like that they did it. It's a good conversation to be had.
Yes. Like,
which hobby games are influential in the history of what we do, and like, we all have our own list, and this is a good list, I think.
Yeah, I'll just throw one last one in there because we don't typically think of this as far as like tabletop board games, but it certainly is anything in the flight path system.
Oh, sure.
From Ares games, all of those different games where you have the planes and how they move. I mean, that influenced so many.
Wings of Glory,
influenced so many other games after it, and it's such a unique and accessible way to play those games.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about Love Letter?
Love Letter, yeah.
Like, just as like a hobby game with a lot of thinking to it that's very small and accessible, quick.
Or again, I'll throw out, how about Memoir 44?
Ooh, it's a good one.
You know, Command and Colors, but, you know, it's the war game that war gamers will play.
Yeah.
And that is a high compliment from war gamers.
All right. We're making a whole new list here, guys. The thing is, though, I think we've only agreed on 2 games to remove, so we'd have to pick 2 of those. So it's probably Twilight Imperium and Dominant Species.
I think so. Yeah. But a lot of, certainly a lot of great, you know, honorable mentions, to say the least.
Yes. Yeah. Great list.
Absolutely. All right, everyone. So until next time, this is Chris.
And this is Anthony.
And we'll save you all a seat at the table. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Every hero strikes out on their adventure for a different reason.
To prove myself worthy of my mother's praise.
To write my own story and discover who I really am.
To prove to my family that I am more than they believe me to be.
To revive the god that has chosen me.
But when the fragile balance of the world is in jeopardy, and sinister forces move in the darkness, heroes will be tested, pushed to their limits and beyond. And it will be left to them to determine if they are up to the task. There is a darkness rising. Will they be able to overcome the challenges and meet this evil head-on?
For my god.
For my story.
For my freedom.
For the world.
To restore the balance. Modified Role Season 2, The Chronicles of Erin, a D&D 5e actual play podcast. New season, new characters, new story. Find us on all the usual podcasting apps or at modifiedrole.com.